Did you know that one of the most beautiful green stones in the world, jade, comes from a place buried in tragedy? Right now, there's a 70% chance that any jade you've ever seen or touched came from one place, Myanmar. But behind its shimmering surface lies a brutal story of greed, suffering, and one of the deadliest mining disasters in history. This is the hidden story of Myanmar's jade, where lives are exchanged for luxury and disaster strikes like an avalanche. Let me take you there. Deep in the remote mountains of Kachin State, Myanmar holds a treasure trove, its jade mines, responsible for nearly 70% of the world's jade supply. The jade trade here is worth a staggering $30 billion a year. Yet while the world profits, the people who mine it pay the highest price. In towns like Hapakant, the heart of jade country, industrial mining machines dig deep into the hills. What they don't want, tons of rock and soil, is dumped into massive, unstable tailing piles. These hills of waste can tower hundreds of feet high, and they become death traps. Here, scavengers called jade pickers risk everything. With bare hands, no protection, and no safety, they comb through this deadly rubble, hoping to find fragments of jade left behind. Many live right at the base of these mountains of waste, waiting to strike early in the morning. Some workers are illegal, many are underage. Most work 12 to 16 hours a day, 7 days a week, no safety gear, no health care, no dignity. Many become addicted to drugs just to numb the exhaustion. Some never return home. The companies running these operations often claim to follow safety standards, but in reality, oversight is weak, corruption is rampant, and some of the most powerful companies are connected to the military or government. To them, these workers are just tools, expendable. Between 2008 and 2024, over 600 people died in jade mine landslides, just in Hpakant alone. But then came the darkest day, July 2nd, 2020. Hpakant was hit with intense monsoon rains. But even heavy storms couldn't stop the desperate jade pickers. It was business as usual. That morning around 6:30 a.m., it started with a low rumble, cracking, a deep growl from the earth. And then it happened. A massive tailing pile collapsed, a tsunami of mud, rock, and mining debris, 20 feet high, rushed down the mountainside with the force of a freight train. Some saw it coming, some shouted to run, but there was no time. That wall of sludge buried hundreds alive. Bodies vanished. Entire work sites were swallowed. Machines were crushed like paper. 174 people were confirmed dead. Over 100 more never found. The only way to be officially counted among the dead? Your body had to be recovered. No body, no compensation. Families of the missing received nothing. In the days that followed, firefighters, soldiers, rescue teams, and volunteers clawed through the mud. They pulled out a few survivors, but for most it was too late. Environmental groups condemned the tragedy. Human rights organizations demanded accountability and reform. But the response? Silence. The same dangerous mining continues. More tailing piles grow. More jade pickers arrive. More landslides come. In fact, just a year later, another landslide killed at least 3 people. Over 70 more went missing, all for a shiny green stone, a gem that the world treasures, but one that comes with blood in its shine. So the next time you see jade glimmering in a shop window, ask yourself, what did it really cost? Because in Myanmar, it might have cost someone everything. It happened in broad daylight, a normal Tuesday. Workers were grinding gunpowder. Locals walked past shops nearby, and within seconds a box fell, a spark lit up, and the entire town of Harda, Madhya Pradesh, was thrown into absolute chaos. What followed was not just a fire, it was a catastrophic explosion that destroyed lives, homes, and trust. But here's the part that makes it worse. This disaster should have never happened, and yet no one stopped it. This wasn't some illegal backdoor operation. It was a large three-story fireworks factory running for over 20 years. Built originally on rural land, the town eventually grew around it, turning the factory into a powder keg, surrounded by homes, shops, and families. The factory employed around 200 people, offering one of the few stable job opportunities in the area. But behind its walls, a dark history was quietly burning. This factory had a long, deadly track record. In 2015, an explosion there killed 2 workers. The owner, Rish Agarwal, was sentenced to 10 years in prison in 2021. But get this, he appealed, got bail, and went right back to running multiple fireworks factories across India. Despite repeated failed inspections, license suspensions, and unresolved safety violations, the factory stayed open. The writing was on the wall, but no one read it, or worse, they ignored it. February 6th began like any other. Workers were inside grinding powder, assembling fireworks. At 11 a.m., a box of stored gunpowder fell, sparking a fire. The fire quickly jumped to fireworks stacked nearby. Within seconds, it was too late. Flames engulfed the factory, trapping several workers inside. Locals tried to help, but as they gathered, boom, a massive explosion tore the factory apart, leveling nearby homes and businesses. The blast was so intense it hurled debris over 250 meters and shattered glass windows up to 5 kilometers away. It looked and sounded like a war zone. As firefighters and medics arrived, they were met with a nightmare. Thick smoke, relentless heat, and repeated explosions made rescue nearly impossible. The factory continued to detonate throughout the day. By nightfall, the building was nothing more than a smoldering crater. Bodies lay scattered, many victims missing limbs, others trapped beneath the rubble. Over 35 ambulances were dispatched. Still, they couldn't keep up with the number of injured. In total, 13 people lost their lives, and more than 172 were injured. Burns, broken bones, amputations. 50-plus families were left homeless, their lives reduced to ash in minutes. Relief camps were set up, but for many, the trauma will last forever. The next day, police arrested Rish Agarwal, his son, and several others. Charges were filed under culpable homicide in the Explosives Act of 1908. Investigators soon uncovered what many feared. This factory should have never been open. Its license had been canceled. It was only approved for 1 story, and yet had 2 illegal floors. They were storing illegal amounts of explosives and gunpowder inside the building. Every safety rule was violated. A 40-page report confirmed the obvious. This wasn't an accident. It was a predictable, avoidable tragedy. Officials suspended 20 licenses, many belonging to Agarwal's relatives. 7 arrests were made, but for the people of Harda, justice still feels distant. The Prime Minister announced 2 lakh rupees compensation for the families of the deceased and 50,000 rupees for the injured. But survivors say it's nowhere near enough. How do you put a price on a lost limb? A dead child? A home turned to ashes? Today, the site of the explosion is still just a charred crater, a haunting reminder of what happens when greed, negligence, and corruption collide. The victims are still fighting for real compensation, for rebuilt homes, and for someone, anyone, to be held truly accountable. And while the headlines may fade, the pain in Harda won't, because this wasn't just a fire, it was a warning A warning we can't afford to ignore again. What started as a night of drinking, games, and puzzles ended in a zip suitcase, a dead boyfriend, and one of the most chilling pieces of evidence ever caught on camera. She said it was hide and seek. The police said it was murder, filled with lies, bizarre claims, and a sentencing that shocked everyone. This is the Suitcase Murder Case of Sarah Boone. Let's rewind to February 24th, 2020 in Winter Park, Florida. 42-year-old Sarah Boone and her boyfriend George Torres Jr., also 42, were at home. According to Sarah, the couple had spent the day drinking wine, playing games, doing puzzles, and working on art projects. But their neighbors told a very different story. They claimed the couple had been arguing loudly and drinking heavily, with Sarah being especially vocal and aggressive. This wasn't new. Their relationship had long been toxic and violent. George had been arrested 4 times for domestic battery against Sarah, yet she bailed him out every time. She had tried to kick him out, even change the locks, but he always came back. And Sarah wasn't innocent either. In one incident, George stabbed her in the leg with a steak knife. In another, they physically fought while both were intoxicated, but nothing, absolutely nothing, prepared anyone for what would happen that night. By the end of the night, George would be dead, found curled up and zipped inside a suitcase. Sarah's version of events? They were playing hide and seek. She joked about how small George was and said he got in the suitcase on his own. But the evidence told a much darker story. 2 videos recorded by Sarah herself told the truth. In the first clip, George is stuck inside the suitcase, struggling to breathe, pleading for his life. His arm is visible through a gap in the zipper as he tries to escape. He tells her, "I can't breathe." "Sarah?" She laughs and replies, "That's how I feel when you choke me and cheat on me."
Sarah.
For everything you've done to me.
Sarah.
For everything you've done to me.
Sarah.
You.
Sarah.
You.
Sarah.
Stupid.
Sarah.
She doesn't help. She doesn't panic. She records. 11 minutes later, a second video. Same suitcase. George still alive. Still begging. And what does Sarah do? She goes upstairs, gets into bed, and goes to sleep. The next morning, Sarah wakes up, goes downstairs, and finds George's body, blue and lifeless. She attempts CPR, then calls her ex-husband before finally dialing 911. By the time paramedics arrived, George had been dead for hours. The official cause of death? Positional asphyxiation. Sarah was arrested and charged with second-degree murder. At the police station, Sarah handed over her phone for forensic evidence and told detectives it was all just a joke. They were having fun. That is, until the detectives showed her the videos she had forgotten she recorded. When they tried to show her, she refused to watch. One detective bluntly said, "He's literally begging for his life while you laugh." This was no game. Sarah's legal process dragged on for over 4 years, slowed by COVID-19 and her constant change of lawyers, 9 times in total. When her trial finally began in October 2024, her defense claimed she suffered from battered spouse syndrome. They pointed to George's violent past, including the time he stabbed her in the leg. Sarah took the stand herself. She said it was just playful behavior gone wrong, that George became aggressive inside the suitcase, and she was afraid of what he'd do if he got out. But then came the golden question. Did you try to help him? Sarah's answer? Number on the stand, she said she saw it as an opportunity to tell him how she really felt, since he couldn't fight back from inside the suitcase. She also lied about how much they drank that night. Investigators found they consumed 3 magnum-sized bottles of wine, each holding twice the alcohol of a standard bottle. Prosecutors offered Sarah a plea deal, 15 years in prison for manslaughter. She could have been out in 8 to 10 years. She refused. On October 25, 2024, the jury deliberated for just 90 minutes. Verdict: guilty of second-degree murder. And on December 2nd, she was sentenced to life in prison without parole. At sentencing, Sarah gave a bizarre speech saying she had forgiven George, his family, and herself. She claimed she was the real victim and later sent the judge a 58-page letter accusing him of being biased and calling herself a survivor. This case is one of the most disturbing examples of domestic violence, emotional manipulation, and sheer cruelty captured on video. While Sarah Boone tells her side, George Torres Jr. will never be able to tell his. And in the end, only one person knows what truly happened that night in Winter Park. Sarah Boone, a woman who now faces life behind bars. February 28, 2023. A quiet night in Greece's picturesque Tempe Valley, until it turned into a scene of unimaginable horror. At 7:22 p.m., Inner City 62, a passenger train carrying 352 souls, 340 passengers and 12 staff, left Athens, heading north toward Thessaloniki. The double-track line was designed for one-way traffic in each direction. Simple, safe, secure, or so it seemed. But just after 11 p.m. at Larissa Station, something went terribly wrong. The station master, confused, perhaps overwhelmed, failed to use a crucial key switch, a small device called the 188A that could have saved lives. Instead of switching back to the correct track, Inner City 62 barreled ahead, on the wrong line, for over 25 kilometers. Coming from the opposite end, a freight train, on that very same track. 11:21 p.m., both trains flying at over 100 miles per hour collided head-on. The first 4 carriages of the passenger train derailed. The front car, it exploded into a hellish fireball, reaching 1,300 degrees Celsius. Emergency services rushed to the scene, but what they found was devastation, crumpled carriages, flames licking the night sky, screams buried under twisted metal. Survivors, many of them students, described a living nightmare. For some, escape meant leaping from shattered windows. For others, there was no escape at all. 57 lives, most of them young students, were lost that night. 66 more were injured, 6 placed on life support. This was the deadliest train disaster in Greek history. Greece declared 3 days of national mourning, flags were lowered, celebrations were canceled. The entire country was in shock. But the questions began immediately. How could this happen? Why did no one stop it? The 59-year-old station master was arrested. Investigators discovered he had not only sent the train down the wrong track, but also told the driver to ignore danger signals. His negligence cost dozens their lives. In the aftermath, Greece's transport minister resigned, accepting responsibility and admitting the nation's railway systems had failed to enter the 21st century. One moment of confusion, one critical mistake, and 57 lives stolen forever. This wasn't just a tragedy, it was a wake-up call. In memory of the lives lost in Tempe Valley, Let us never forget the price of human error and the cost of a system left behind. What was supposed to be a breathtaking ride over golden beaches and shimmering waves turned into a horrifying mid-air tragedy. This is the chilling true story of the SeaWorld helicopter crash that shook Australia in early 2023. And yes, the terrifying moment was caught on camera. It all began on January 2nd, 2023, in Gold Coast, Queensland, Australia. The skies were clear, the sun beamed brightly, a perfect day for a scenic helicopter tour. A group of excited tourists boarded a chopper near SeaWorld, hoping to catch a glimpse of majestic marine life and the stunning Gold Coast from the air. As the helicopter took off, passengers were thrilled, soaking in the sweeping views, wind rushing through their hair, cameras capturing every magical moment. But then, just before 2 p.m., the unthinkable happened. The footage shows the tourists enjoying the ride, until suddenly the pilot stops looking forward. A passenger taps him on the shoulder, perhaps sensing something's wrong. Just 1 second later, a mid-air collision. Another helicopter, also departing from SeaWorld, strikes them. The main rotor blades and gearbox of the second chopper separate mid-air, sending it spiraling out of control. The damaged helicopter crashes directly into the sandbar. A tragic scene unfolds. Miraculously, the helicopter seen in the footage manages to stay airborne. The pilot, showing extraordinary skill, performs an emergency landing on the same sandbar, though the helicopter is badly damaged. Beachgoers, boaters, and nearby police rushed to the scene. Some even watched it all unfold live. People scramble to help, providing first aid, freeing passengers from the wreckage, and calling for emergency services. On the beach, nurses step in to perform CPR. But for some, it's already too late. 4 lives are lost: a 40-year-old pilot, a 36-year-old woman, and a British couple, aged 65 and 57. Another 6 passengers are seriously injured and rushed to the hospital. The exact cause of the crash is still under investigation, but authorities discovered something strange. The pilot, who was in the air, did not recall hearing the standard taxiing call made by the helicopter on the ground. That doesn't necessarily mean the call wasn't made, just that it may not have been received. What started as a dream ride ended in a nightmare. A moment of joy turned into tragedy in mere seconds. This crash serves as a chilling reminder of how quickly things can go wrong,